выпускай Кракена!
At night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah. Make all the demons quiet, yeah.
After months of living in fear, Olga Ivanova says she was shocked to see how hastily the Russian forces who occupied her village had withdrawn. We found 16 of them hiding in a cellar. They had nowhere to go, said the elderly resident of Verbivka in northeastern Ukraine. The others stole cars to leave. They also took bicycles. That's how the Russian retreat was. That was on September 6, the day Ukraine launched a counteroffensive that took Russia by surprise. The lightning advance resulted in Ukrainian forces retaking some 8,000 square kilometers of territory and also dealing a major blow against the Russian military and its morale. Nadia, another Verbivka resident, shared Ivanova's relief and surprise over the Russian troops fleeing. They ran away. They didn't leave, they ran away. The officers fled first and left the lower ranks behind, she told Al Jazeera, standing in front of the wreckage of what used to be the village's only school. On September 7, 2 missiles hit the building, which acted as the base for the Russian forces, said Nadia, an accountant. She believes it was bombed to destroy evidence of their presence. Inside, uniforms and ammunition could be seen among the rubble. A short distance to the south is the town of Balaklia, the Ukrainian forces' first major win since the start of the counteroffensive. Here, the occupation hub was the local police station. In its windowless cells, there are markings on the wall counting the days. Forensic experts say forces from Luhansk, one of 2 self-proclaimed pro-Russian republics in eastern Ukraine, were also stationed in the town. Ukraine says it has reclaimed 300 communities, home to about 150,000 people, but Russia still holds large parts of the country, said Al Jazeera's Hoda Abdul Hamid, reporting from Balaklia. The hasty retreat may signal Ukraine struck first where the Russian defenses were weakest. Ukrainian prosecutors say they have found several bodies bearing traces of torture in recently recaptured villages. But while the destruction in the area is reminiscent of the scenes witnessed in the towns near Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, following Russia's withdrawal in March, there are no traces of mass killings as seen in places such as Bucha. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy paid a surprise visit to Izyum, another recaptured northeastern town and a key logistical hub. Following his arrival, officials raised the Ukrainian flag in front of the burned-out City Hall building in the largely devastated town. The view is very shocking, but it is not shocking for me, because we began to see the same pictures from Bucha, from the first deoccupied territories. So the same destroyed buildings, killed people, Zelenskyy told reporters. Following Russia's rout in Kharkiv Oblast, Russian military bloggers took to Telegram to criticize Putin for not mobilizing the Russian army. The bloggers do seem to have some influence over the Kremlin as they are a popular source of information about the war for Russians. Yuri Podolyaka, a Crimea-based Russian military blogger who has 2.4 million followers, said in a Telegram post last Saturday, "To be honest, we've been defeated in battle." He added, "The current defeat in Kharkiv is the result of the fact that so far many in the defense ministry are trying to ignore the problems that were revealed during the first months of the war." Other military bloggers joined him, calling for the full might of the Russian state to be brought to bear. However, Putin has a dilemma. A full mobilization could prove to be extremely unpopular in Russia. Thousands or hundreds of thousands more soldiers would be sent to Ukraine, where the casualty rates have been extremely high on both sides. Last month, U.S. officials estimated that Russia has suffered 70 to 80,000 casualties since the start of the war. It is unclear if Russia can sustain its special military operation without calling for a full mobilization, but, for now, Putin seems to have deemed declaring war on Ukraine too risky to his position at home. Kremlin officials and state media propagandists are acknowledging recent Russian defeats in Ukraine's eastern Kharkiv region in a move meant to shield President Vladimir Putin from responsibility, according to the Institute for the Study of War. The U.S. think tank wrote in its September 13 campaign assessment that Kremlin and state media pundits are now extensively discussing why Russia is facing losses in Kharkiv. The Kremlin's acknowledgement of the defeat is part of an effort to mitigate and deflect criticism for such a devastating failure away from Russian President Vladimir Putin and onto the Russian Ministry of Defense and the Uniformed Military Command, the ISW wrote. Ukraine's surprise counteroffensive in Kharkiv came as attention was focused on another relatively new push to retake territory in the southern Kherson region, where Russian losses are also being reported. Over the weekend, General Valery Zelenskyy, the commander of Ukraine's military, said in a Telegram post that Ukrainian troops had pushed to within 50 kilometers, about 30 miles, of the Ukraine-Russia border in Kharkiv. Russia's defense ministry initially framed the news of a Russian retreat in the area as a regrouping of its forces to the eastern Donetsk region, though a Ukrainian ambassador mocked this explanation on Twitter with a video of fleeing chickens. The discussions on Russian losses in Kharkiv are especially notable because they mark the first time that Russia has publicly acknowledged defeats in the ongoing war, the ISW wrote. When Russia invaded Ukraine on February 24, it focused its offensive on Kyiv, but later began a new phase of the war in April centered on the eastern Donbass region after failing to capture the capital city. The Kremlin never admitted that Russia was defeated around Kyiv or, later, at Snake Island, framing the retreat from Kyiv as a decision to prioritize the liberation of Donbass and the withdrawal from Snake Island as a gesture of goodwill, the think tank wrote. When Russia's forces withdrew in June from Snake Island, Ukraine pushed back on Moscow's explanation for leaving, instead saying that they retook the Black Sea outpost with military force. Now, Kremlin sources are placing blame for Russia's Kharkiv losses on what they say are under-informed military advisors within Putin's circle, according to the ISW. One member of the Kremlin's Council for Interethnic Relations, Bogdan Bespalko, even stated that military officials who had failed to see the concentration of Ukrainian troops and equipment and disregarded telegram channels that warned of the imminent Ukrainian counter-offensive in Kharkiv Oblast should have their heads lying on Putin's desk, it wrote in the assessment. The think tank added that the Kremlin's acknowledgement of the Kharkiv losses shows that Putin is willing and able to recognize and even accept a Russian defeat at least in some circumstances and focus on deflecting blame from himself. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button so you can be alerted to our next video. We'll see you again soon on Warzone.